Hey folks, Adam Bryan Dada here with a low reward video series response to a couple of comments, debate points, and conversations that nobody wants to have regarding the fallacy of going to college. And this is not only in America, this is going to be true in Europe or Asia or even in South America. Could be a rich capitalist nation. It could also be a poor, ex-urban, agricultural nation. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about why I am really, have never really had the energy to write out this debate in comments for very long, so I figured I was going to make a video so I can post links to it. When I was 15 years old, back in 1989, a lot of my friends, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, was my neighborhood. A lot of them were already planning their college careers and their actual careers. Everybody was very smart, National Honor Society and honor roll and all that. And I was the D student. I think I'd actually failed a few classes, but I was really good at looking at the future by analyzing trends, even at 15. And I had done the math. And back then, college was pretty inexpensive. I would be surprised if any of my even Ivy League friends had spent $100,000 on 4 years of college. It was probably quite a bit less. I wouldn't know. I didn't go. I attended school for all of 6 weeks, much to the consternation of my parents, who had advanced me the $2,000 to go to a local state college for a semester. Went for 6 weeks, dropped out, realized it wasn't for me because I already had some side hustles going on. But at 15, I had done the math and I had asked people strong questions. And mind you, when I was a young kid, interest rates in savings accounts were probably in the 7 to 9% range. It was quite high in the 80s. And of course, today we don't have interest rates like that. But even back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, with all of the various crises and military concerns and running out of oil and global cooling and all those, even back then, the stock markets were still returning, but they always returned 7, 8, 9, 10% over a period of time. And we had early knowledge of what great returns were going on in the investment world. Although it wasn't easy to do investing when, we didn't have the internet, brokerage houses were expensive. But even at 15, I had done the math, and I had done it improperly a little bit. I actually fell short of what the reality was. So I looked at it and I said, wow, so the average person who goes to college thinks they're going to go away for 4 years. 4 years. And this is at your most mentally capable, fastest time of your life for learning. You have unlimited stamina as long as you're healthy and not obese. You've got tons of opportunities available to you because you don't have a negative reputation. You don't have any kind of, you don't have any kind of, one second, put that there. You don't have any kind of criminal record. Even if you did, you were a minor. So realistically, you're looking at an 18-year-old, and this is a person who has his whole life ahead of him, but the best part of his life is available to him now. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this person and you're going to put him in a building, with a whole bunch of young people who are just like him or her, with a mind that has not been filled with useless information yet, with a mind that has not been fully corrupted probably by drugs and alcohol and too much mindless consumerism, still formative. And you're going to do that, and you're going to teach them all the exact same thing. And you expect them all to hit the exact same standards. And instead of being introduced to markets with hundreds or thousands of participants, you're going to introduce them to what a person who says, jump through these hoops and I'll give you a good grade. And if you don't get a good grade, you can't be the president of America, or you can't be a doctor or a lawyer. So a lot of fear is being put into the kids even back then, especially back then. And all my friends knew that they were going to go to a great college and they were going to take on debt and they were going to, become the next president. I think only one of my high school peers actually went on to politics and is doing quite well. But we're all scared about that. We're afraid of the future. But I knew, I said, 4 years of my life when I was going to be the best I could be at learning, and tons of energy and tons of ability to take risks and even fail. I mean, if you file bankruptcy, you can recover in 2 years. And you can't really do that when you're 40 years old with kids. But when you're 20 or 18, why would I want to do that? So I did the math. And I said, here are some people who are going to take on college debt for over 4 years. The worst maybe being $100,000. And the average person's probably looking at $30,000, $40,000 over 4 years. And that's inclusive only of the education. That didn't always include the dorms and the books and transportation and food and all that stuff. But nonetheless, that's going to be, some of that's a cost of life anyway. So you got people who are doing 4 years of college. And they can do nothing else. Some people work through college, but they had a part-time job or they worked at a bar waitressing or whatever. It really wasn't career-building kind of stuff. Most people who did go to college also ended up interning, working for nothing. I did the math and I said, back then, minimum wage was $4.25. If I got, let's say, 2 or 3 jobs at $4.25 an hour, and I worked, say, 20, 30, 40 hours a week, maybe an average for each job, let's say 28 hours a week, and you're looking at maybe 60 hours a week at $4.25 an hour to start. And nobody gets paid $4.25 an hour for long. The average person I had spoken with who was 19, 20 years old, just working retail at the mall, was making closer to $6, $7, even though the minimum wage was $4.25.
So it's
That's
square
okay.
or round?
Round.
Round.
Gracias. So they're making $6, $7 an hour. And if you're doing it 60 hours a week, you're making $400, $500 a week. Plus, at that age, I was able to mow lawns and shovel snow and clean cars and clean out garages and help out with random day labor at the local warehouses and all that. So I'm looking at these numbers from a 15-year-old perspective, and I'm thinking, wow, that's like $20,000 a year. Maybe a little bit more, maybe $25,000 a year. And I'm living at home with my parents. I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying for food. I'm not paying for anything really. I'm living completely rent-free. And while I'll be paying some taxes, I won't be paying a lot of taxes. So my net proceeds might be somewhere in the range of $21,000 per year over 4 years. While I'm networking, trying a bunch of different jobs on, being able to take all sorts of risks, and being able to sock the money away for investment purposes. So over 4 years, if the return on investment was 0%, I might have made about $80,000, maybe $85,000. And when you're a kid, you can handle those kind of hours. It's obvious that there are people who could do a lot more, I realized. And this is at 15, mind you. So the average person going to college is leaving college, let's say $40,000 in debt, $50,000 in debt. And even if they worked to pay some of that, none of it went to investments, 0 of it. And if they're living alone and buying food and doing the typical college hustle that, indoctrinates people into mindless consumerism forever, they're probably out over 4 years, maybe $160,000, let's say, all said and done in terms of what they could have had on the flip side, plus the debt. And I know those numbers don't make a lot of sense, but if I can make $85,000 in 4 years and then tack on another $40,000 for debt in the opposite direction, and plus food and partying and all that stuff, because you're not living at home, most people, when you go off to college and live in the dorms. And I'm not indoctrinating myself into drinking beer and doing drugs and all sorts of other nonsense that's gonna stick with you until your 30s. So here I'm looking, I could leave college with 4 years of credentials, having met and networked with the potential of maybe a dozen business owners, maybe more, or brands, or whatever, climb the ladder, build a resume, build a skill set, look and see what I actually want to do in my life. And I end up being $160,000 ahead of everyone else. $80,000, $85,000 actually in the bank. Run the numbers. Go to any financial return calculator and run the numbers. Put in a starting amount of, say, $85,000 and put it in at 7% return over 10 years and tell me what you find, adding nothing to that number. Now do that over 20 years and you see the difference that is made when you're not paying this craziness to college debt, plus the consumer addictions that are created by being around people who are being homogenized, made identical to everybody else. And this is something I discovered in 1989 that nobody else was talking about. But when I brought this up to the asshole deans and guidance counselors, who I think, and this is me making allegations, but allegedly, I don't believe that those people didn't have any payoff from the colleges or the loan officers or the banks who were getting people indoctrinated into this mindless education chasing. And of all the people I know who went to college, I would say maybe out of a few, maybe 2,000 that I actually knew between all the schools that I went to, I'd say maybe 20 or 30 really succeeded at it. And we're talking doctors, maybe one lawyer. The rest of the lawyers are losers today. Muy bien, gracias. Sí, excelente. Maybe the doctors and the lawyers, we're talking like maybe 20, okay, and a couple of politicians. But again, if you're good at politics, you're going to do well no matter where you are, and you don't even need to go to school for it. So we're working through this at the age of 18, 19, 20. I'm actually doing it. Instead of going to college, I actually have jobs. And the thing I realized is I didn't just have to work 30, 40 hours a week, 50, 60 hours a week. When I had the energy, when I had the drive, I could work even more. And it was because of that. I had all this energy. I had this brilliant ability to learn skills. Or some of them were horrible skills. I mean, I cleaned fish tanks. It was disgusting. But I learned I was bad at that. And I learned I was good at some things. I was terrible at mowing lawns, but I was great at finding people who were good at mowing lawns. So instead of being the lawnmower, I was the guy finding the work, giving 50% to the lawnmower and keeping 50% to myself. So you think about what I did between the ages of 18 to 21 over 4 years. And I did invest that money early on, before the dot-coms and the Amazons and before Apple really took off. Even Berkshire Hathaway wasn't that expensive in 1992. And I put away a huge nest egg, which I later blew when I got married. I made 7 figures in my 20s, starting with nothing, no skills, no degree, no education, no resume for big companies. I never really made more than 10 or 12 bucks an hour in the early days because I was doing grunt labor. I was doing it to learn skills. I was doing it to network with people. And some of those relationships I had created in the early 90s are still with me today. But people knew me as a guy who was out to hustle. The business owners, the managers, the retailers that I worked for CompUSA for a year, maybe less. I worked for some place in the mall that sold candy or chocolates. I don't even remember anymore. But in all those cases, I stayed in touch with those people. And instead of just meeting other mindless, educated drones in college and teachers who didn't really care, they were out. Oh, sí, gracias, perfecto. Instead of making those kind of connections, what I did is I put money away, I learned to invest, I learned the benefits of residual passive dividend income. I learned how fast compound interest grows over 4 years, which is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing what happens when the returns are 8, 9, 10% averaged over a decade, but coming pretty quickly during the boom markets. And I learned during the bust markets that if you keep buying stock, the bust markets are when you make the most returns in the long run. These are the things that the average guidance counselor didn't guide people on. They wanted people to go to college, get loans, who knows for what reason. Again, I'm making allegations, but I don't trust any of those people. They're pricks to me. They lied to me. They lied to a lot of my peers. And the ones that went there and got into this debt, some of them are still paying it off. What is it, 25 years later, they're still paying the debts off? And the 4 years that I invested, that returned way more than $85,000 by the time I was 21, way more than $85,000 in investments. Just working crappy, practically minimum wage, low skill, mindless retail jobs to let me put away a ton of money because mom and dad let me crash on the couch for 4 years. Now, had I not blown it on a marriage, I probably would be a multi-millionaire today, never having had a job that paid a high return. So that's really my pitch on why college is really a mindless, consumer medium, no different than video games and porn and Netflix and all that stuff. But we're sworn to go to college at a young age because we're scared, we're feared, we fear what would happen to us. We're going to be homeless garbage men, I think my dad said a couple of times when I was young. And the reality is, not going to college and instead using my youthful energy and labor and skill building mind at the best time in my life to do it is what made me the man that I am today. Had I known more about low reward living then, I definitely would be way farther ahead than I am now. Might be good to share this video with someone young that you know that might be kind of an education loser, and let them ponder and do the math, which I'll be happy to do if you leave some comments below. I'll do the math, put them in a spreadsheet, and share them if you'd like to know more about that. Thanks for watching. I'm Adam Brian Dada, and this is the Low Reward video series. Un momento.